Welcome everyone to the next alumni career webinar, Returning to Work, Changing Direction, How to Make Your Career Transition Successful with Marta McManus from the class of 2000. I'm Maura Sweeney, Director of Alumni Career and Professional Development at Holy Cross, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to today's webinar offered exclusively for the Holy Cross community. We'll be together for about an hour today, and after the formal presentation, Marta will take questions from you for as long as time allows. I encourage you to submit questions throughout the presentation by using the Q&A function on your webinar control panel. And you're also welcome to use the chat, introduce yourself, communicate with us. We always love to hear comments and questions. This presentation is recorded, will be made available to all participants in a few days. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to today's speaker. Marta McManus has over 17 years of combined experience in counseling, career coaching, and connecting her clients with industry. Her continued connection to industry informs the work with her clients. She specializes in helping clients successfully transition in their career, return to work, change direction completely, or step up after stepping back in their career. On a personal note, she loves to spend time with her family, especially outdoors, biking, hiking, whitewater rafting, you name it. The beach is her happy place, and she is an avid runner. She currently resides in Westwood, Massachusetts, with her husband and 2 kids. I am thrilled that she is here with us today. It has been an absolute joy to get to know Marta throughout preparing for this presentation, and I know that she has a lot of great tips to share with everyone. So with that, I will hand things over to you, Marta.
Thank you so much, Maura, and hello and welcome to everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I have absolutely loved my experience at Holy Cross, so anytime I have an opportunity to come back in person or virtually, I'm thrilled to do so. It has been great getting to have the chance to talk to you guys today. So hopefully, after this, we can answer some of your specific questions, but I'll try to give you some tips on, if you're looking to return to work or change direction, as we said, and how to make that transition a little more successful. So first, let's just talk about the context. Obviously, COVID-19 has disrupted the world of work and has changed so many things. And I think, if you're following the news, you've read all about the great resignations and the crazy number of jobs that are out there. I think as of the end of August of this year, according to the Department of Labor, there were 10.4 million jobs out there. And millions of men and women, close to 5 million total, have left the workforce in the past year and a half. So obviously there's a lot going on in this space. According to a recent LinkedIn survey, 59% of people are either actively looking or at least considering changing industries, which is also interesting. Not only are people looking to leave their jobs or change jobs, but they're also looking at going to completely different industries and different jobs. And 59% is not a small number. I mean, that's a big chunk of the population looking at that. So why do I tell you all this? Well, it's to tell you that you're not alone if you're looking to make a change. There are a lot of people like you who are doing this. So hopefully that gives you some peace of mind and comfort that you're not alone in all of this. And to set the stage a little further, there are obviously a lot of different career transition scenarios. So I'm going to mention just a few, and then I want to get a feel from the audience as to where you fall in this. So I'm going to go in the order of least difficult to most difficult change. So for some of you, it could be that you're looking to do the same job. Maybe you're an accountant, but you want to go to a new industry. For others of you, it might be that you want a new job, but with the same company and within the same industry. Maybe you really love your company, but you're just looking for something new to do, or maybe you're looking for a new challenge. For others, it could be shifting from full-time to part-time or freelance or consulting work. So maybe through the pandemic, as many have, you figured out that full-time isn't working with your current life, and you need to shift in a part-time freelance direction. It could also be that you're looking to return to work after a break. Maybe you took a break pre-pandemic or during the pandemic, and now you're looking to get back into it. Or maybe you were working part-time or freelancing, and now you're looking to go full-time. That could also be a scenario. And then lastly, and this is probably the most difficult switch, is you're looking to just start from scratch. New job, new industry, new everything, and you want to start over. So I know that Maura has kindly put together the polls for us. So if she could queue up the first one, what's your current situation? If you could just choose one of those options. And if it's other, just type in the chat what it is. All right, so it looks like the poll results are in. And it looks like the biggest category is people looking to change a job and change industry. So you guys are along with that 59% in the LinkedIn survey that are looking to just start over. So the information I'm going to share today will help everyone who's in any of those categories. There's some really sort of tangible things that you can do, and then some other things that you need to think about. And then let's see in the chat, we have looking to add something more structured to the freelance work. Okay, so that's helpful to know as well. Okay, great. Well, thank you for sharing. And then we're going to do one more poll just so that I have a better sense of kind of where you guys are, what you're looking for. And that is, what are you hoping to get out of this session? So we only have about 40 minutes that we have. And as I said to Maura before this, if I could talk all day with you all about all the different things we could do, but in the 40 minutes, what's the number one thing you're looking or hoping to get out of it? All right, so it looks like knowing how to plan for your next step wins this one. All right, so we will talk about that, and hopefully that's, one of those things that you will probably walk away with some tangible things, but that's a really big and kind of loaded one. So it's not as simple as fixing up your resume, and so I just want to put that out there that I will not give anyone a solid plan to follow every day. Certainly you can follow up with me after and we can talk about that, but I will do my best to give you some tips on this. So how to make a successful transition. The first thing is create a plan. So many of you who are looking to do this are right on target. I mean, this is what you're looking to do. And then networking is going to be key to any plan you have. And then creating or updating your digital presence. And those are the two tangible things, networking and creating or updating your digital presence. I can give you some tangible tips that you can probably implement after this webinar and put into place so that you can feel like you're taking steps in the right direction. So, whoops, I think I went too fast. Okay, so what do you need to create a plan? Well, as the picture shows, you might need a plan A and a B and a C, depends on your individual circumstances. But the first thing you need to do is assess where you are. Decide where you want to go next. So interests, skills, values, past roles you enjoyed, those are things you need to be thinking about. And then figure out what you need to get there, right? So you're going to have to do some research, maybe in person, maybe online, to figure out kind of, what are the possibilities here. And then part of the figuring out what you need to get there is also the support that you need, right? So that might mean, talking to your network, talking to your friends, family about what it is that you're hoping to do, so that they can open up their networks to you. It may mean talking to mentors or other people in the industry that you're looking to pivot to. For those of you, especially who are looking to change industries, you're going to have to do some fact finding and figuring out what it is that you are looking to do and how to get there, right? What are the skills gaps that you need to close and things of that nature. It might mean that you want to talk to a recruiter to find out, more about the landscape of the industry you're looking to change into. What are the hours like? What is the pay like? Does that match up with the values and what you're looking to do? Those are all important considerations. And obviously I'm just scratching the surface here with the kinds of questions you'd be asking, but those are some of the things that you need to think about. Maybe you need to talk to a career coach to kind of help you guide you through the next steps and figuring out how to get there. So that's part of the creating your plan. And then number one and most important thing, honestly, is to write down your goal. It might sound silly, but there's actually some statistical scientific backing to say that if you write down your goal, you're much more likely to accomplish it by a significant number. So whatever your goal is, it could be the big overarching goal, or it could be, just a small thing that you're going to do to get to the next step. But you should write it down. And in a minute, I'll give you some more ideas how to break this down. So when you think about goal setting anytime with anything in life, you want to make sure that your goal is specific. So setting a goal like I want to get a new job is not a good way to start, because that is so broad and it's probably overwhelming. If you say to yourself, I want to get a new job, do you feel like, okay, I know exactly what to do? You don't, right? You're like, oh gosh, where do I start? This is a big step. So you want to make sure it's specific. It could be something as simple as, I want to get a new job. That's my big and overarching goal, but I'm going to break it down into smaller goals. And the first thing is going to be, I'm going to figure out which industry it is that I want to get into. And that means I'm going to spend half an hour each day researching, or I'm going to talk to one person every week that will help me advance to where I want to go. Or it could be, I'm going to make sure my LinkedIn is up to date, or my resume is in good shape, or whatever it is. But make it specific and make it measurable so that you know that how you've met the goal, right? So, and it's meaningful. You want to know that I will know that I met the goal because I've talked to one person and I check it off, or I put a half hour in my calendar and I spent that time doing that work. So you also want to think about what actions you need to take to achieve it. So, make it something that's actionable and that you can act on, and things that are within your control, because there are things that you can't control, like what industries are hiring, you can't control. So make it something that you have control over. The other thing you want to think about is who is going to support you in this goal. So again, I go back to who are the people who are going to support you in this? Is it your family? Is it your network, your colleagues, your peers, your friends, etc.? So you want to think about who and write down who is going to be that support, because anytime you set a goal, you're going to have good days and bad days. And on the days that are not so good, you want to have people to lean on and say, okay, it's going to get better, or, that they know that what you're going through. The other thing you want to think about is your goal relevant, and how is it relevant? Is it, how will achieving your goal feel? Will it feel rewarding? And if it's rewarding, which value of the values that you have matches up with this goal? So is changing your job, in this example, going to improve your quality of life or your health or your financial security or what have you? Because it's really important to tie the goal to a value you have. Because if it's not tied to a value you have, you're going to be less likely to achieve it because it's not going to have as much meaning for you. So that's, again, something to think about. And then lastly, and importantly, your time frame. What's the time frame? When are you looking to do this? You want to make sure that you give yourself a window of time. And it doesn't mean you can't adjust it as you go. For all of these things, you can adjust things as you go, but you have to start somewhere. And so it's important to say, make sure you're realistic in your time frame, of course, but I think it would be unrealistic to say I'm going to get a new job in a new industry within a month, right? Because that's unless you've been working on it for a while, it's probably not going to happen. So think about what's realistic and then set that time frame and be flexible and be willing to adjust it if you need to. So now I'm going to move a little bit to sort of some tangible things that you can do. And so some tangible things, it was the number 2 thing in sort of how to make this transition successful, and it's networking. So what is networking and does it work? Well, before we get started, maybe we could do a quick poll just about how people feel about networking, because I know that networking is one of those really charged words, and some people love it and some people don't love it. So if you could quickly just respond to the poll that Maura put up. Oh boy, we have quite a split over here. We have some people, I would say the people who love networking are kind of in the minority, and then we have the indifferent and hate networking about the same. So, but everyone knows what networking is. So that is good, because I've been in sessions where that's not true. So thank you for responding to that. So for those of you who love networking, I probably won't tell you anything different, and you probably love it all and you'll go out there and do it and no problem. For those of you who hate it or are indifferent, you're going to have to learn to at least appreciate it. You don't have to love it, but you have to learn to appreciate it for what it does. So at the core, networking is relationship building. And it works because it builds trust. When you build a relationship with someone, get to know them, it builds trust. And so it increases your chances of having opportunities for interaction with people that you might not have normally interacted with, which means that it increases your chances of hearing about opportunities such as jobs and things of that nature that you would not normally have heard of. So, the saying in sort of amongst career coaches is, it's not who you know, it's who your network knows. And it does just that. It expands your network. It also makes people who wouldn't normally get to know you aware of your skills and what you have to offer. It allows you to bypass the black hole of job postings. Honestly, if you just go on Indeed.com and apply for jobs there, and that's the only thing you're doing to help change your situation, it's not going to be super successful. It's not to say that you can't get a job that way. You can. It's just not the best, most strategic use of your time to get one. And it also doesn't, networking gives you access to jobs that are never even posted. And I'll give you some statistics in a moment. And I think, even though I know them and I've told them to people over and over, I'm still every time surprised just at how different the numbers are in terms of how many people get jobs through networking versus not. So if we could do the poll question on sort of how many people think that jobs are secured through networking, what percentage of jobs are secured through networking? Yep. So those of you who said more than 50%, you're right. According to HubSpot, 85% of jobs are filled through networking. So think about that, 85%. If you're not networking, you're missing out, and you're only accessing 15% of jobs. And according to CNBC, 70% of jobs are never published publicly. So that means you're only seeing 30% of jobs. So how many are you missing out that could be great fits for what you're looking to do, but just aren't ever posted publicly? So if you're not talking to people on the inside, you would never know about them. Those jobs that are not listed publicly are either posted internally or created specifically for candidates that recruiters meet through networking. So that's another big point that I want to focus on. There are actually recruiters who, hiring managers network all the time to hire the best people. And so they will actually go as far as to create a job for someone they've met that they think is a great fit and would be a value add to the organization. So a job that never existed. And so, how great would it be if there was a job created for you to match exactly what you have to offer? And according to LinkedIn, 70% of professionals hired in 2016 had a connection at their company, and 80% considered networking vital to their career success. So those are some pretty large numbers in terms of how networking is really impactful. And so I just want you guys to keep that in mind as you're figuring out your next steps. So there are lots of different ways to network. And again, I could spend all day talking about it, but we only have so much time. And so I'm going to talk about just 2 ways today: LinkedIn and informational interviewing. Obviously, events in person and virtual are great. Anytime you can connect with people one-on-one, whether it's coffee or some sort of professional association meeting, what have you. I think they're all great opportunities as long as you're strategic in how you're approaching it. Referrals from people are also great. But again, in the interest of time, we're going to talk about the 2 that I think are easiest and most impactful that can be done in sort of high volume. So in terms of networking, I'm actually going to go back 1 slide because I don't want you to look at that yet. But in terms of networking and how to do it, for those of you who don't like networking or who hate it, to put it even more strongly, start with first-degree connections. So that would be your friends and family. And again, it's not necessarily thinking like, well, I don't have any friends who work at companies where I want to work, or I don't have any family who works there. But telling your friends and family about what you're trying to do will allow them to look at their networks and maybe make a referral, connect you with someone they know who works at a company that you want to work at. And again, that's not saying, it's again, not who you know, but it's who your network knows. And if you focus on that, family, friends, colleagues, mentors, those should be your sort of first-degree people that you go to. And then you want to branch out to professional associations that you're a member of, or that you can join because you're looking to pivot and go to a different industry. Industry-specific associations, alumni associations. I mean, being a member of the Holy Cross Alumni Association, that opens up a whole network of people that you might not know personally, but who all share a connection with you because we all went to Holy Cross. And I know that personally, anytime I've had anyone from Holy Cross reach out to me about anything, I'm always more than willing to talk to them. And I've found the same of other people whenever I've reached out. So, and then, Other ways to sort of network would be, as I said, the events, conferences, talks, webinars, receptions, etc. Asking for referrals when you meet people. And I'll talk about this a little more when I get to informational interviewing, which is actually the next thing. And then we'll talk about ways to leverage LinkedIn as well. So, so basically for LinkedIn, and that's the next slide here. So LinkedIn, this is a profile checklist. This one is specifically, I pulled it right off of LinkedIn's website, and this one is geared for students, but I think a lot of this is applicable, which is, I just like the visual, so I wanted to put that out there. I'm actually going to talk about all the different sections and things to focus on for you guys. So I'll do that. LinkedIn will lead into informational interviewing, because these days a great deal of networking happens online and virtually, and so your digital presence is really key. If you don't have a LinkedIn, I strongly encourage you to create one. If you have one, make sure it's really up to date and that it has all the relevant information, because that is often the number one thing that people look at when they when recruiters want to find out more information about you. So, so that is definitely important. So just in general, you want to think about your digital presence. And if you were to Google your name, like what comes up? I do this periodically because I want to see what's out there connected to my name. But I can't tell you how many times when I've been in situations where I've interviewed for jobs, or when I've interviewed people, I go to Google their name to see what comes up. And so privacy settings on different social platforms change all the time. And so you want to just be aware of that and make sure that when you Google yourself, that what you get is the image you want to portray to a potential employer. Because oftentimes when privacy settings change, there might be pictures out there of you or your family and things like that that you might not want an employer to see. And so think about that. The other thing I will say is just having LinkedIn, as I said, and having it up to date, and making sure that you're connected to your networks. So, make sure the professional associations you're a member of, you probably have a LinkedIn page, connect to them, because that opens up a whole slew of people that now you're in a group together. And even if they don't have a page, there are often groups created for different industries. So for example, I had a client who was looking to get into event planning, and there are so many event planning organizations out there, and you can become a member. And oftentimes it's just, request to have access to be a member, and you have to answer some questions, and then you become a member, and now you can contact people in that group and say, oh, we're both in the same group together, and I wanted to see if I could get 20 minutes of your time to talk. And again, we'll talk about that with the informational interviewing. But so that's really critical, and making sure that those things are often dismissed by people, and they think about like, okay, I'm going to put my picture, my name, my jobs that I have, and stop there. But there's a lot more to LinkedIn, and I encourage you to use all of those options. And so with that, if we could do a quick poll about what percentage of recruiters use LinkedIn? You guys are good. So you're right, 87% of recruiters regularly use LinkedIn, and this is according to LinkedIn statistics. But with 55 million companies listed on the site and 14 million jobs open at any given time, I mean, it is something that they use all the time. So it is important that you are there and you're relevant. So let's talk about the specific sections. I'm going to start with the profile picture. So this is a fact that I like to throw out there just in terms of networking in general, but specifically with just putting yourself out there. One of my favorite etiquette and manners experts, Jody Smith from Mannersmith, says that you need to have 13 positive interactions to counteract one negative one. So when you think about, you only have one shot on LinkedIn to make a good first impression with a recruiter or someone who's looking at your profile. You want to make sure that all of your stuff is up to par, and specifically your picture. You know, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It certainly does not need to have a professional photographer take your picture, although you can. With the cameras that our phones have these days, it's just as easy to have your iPhone or your Droid phone take a photo, just as long as you have someone who can take that photo. And again, a headshot should just be what you're seeing up there, shoulders and up, you know, dressed professionally, and with a plain background, no, you know, not a lot going on in the background, because the focus should be on you and not the background. And you know, make sure you take advantage of the uploading space that they give you. The picture should be at least 200 pixels by 200 pixels, but larger is fine too. You can crop it to be the right size, and scale it to look, you know, your best. And just a picture that looks friendly and approachable. I know people sometimes have strong feelings about the smile, no smile. I think, you know, you don't have to be laughing out loud, but a little smile always, I think, tends to come across as like more approachable. So I recommend that. And that's really it. And, you know, it's not that complicated. Just a sort of easy, simple headshot will do it. I know people who have done professional ones, and that's fine too, but the most important piece is just that it's a good picture of you and no one else is in it. You know, I know people put pictures with kids and everything. Save that for Facebook, Instagram, and every other social media platform, but don't do it on LinkedIn. So that's that for the picture. And then the headline is also really important. This is your opportunity to describe the job you want, your key skills, and, you know, best approach is to think about what a recruiter might type into a search engine to try to find the right candidate for the job, and then use those words. If you're not sure what the keywords are for the jobs that you're targeting, do some research, look at the job descriptions and see what words come up over and over again, and try to mimic those in your headline. And then similarly, the summary, you know, again, it depends on who you ask. I would say keep it to a couple paragraphs, or, you know, a paragraph into some bullet points. You want to keep it short and sweet, and just get across basically who you are, key areas of expertise, and what you have to offer potential employers. Those are probably the three things you want to hit in there. You know, like, what's your background, key areas of expertise, and what do you have to offer to the potential employer, because that's what they're most interested in. And if you have any gaps in your employment history or anything that you feel like warrants explaining, this is also a good opportunity to do that. You can certainly do it in a cover letter if you're doing a formal application, but if you are just putting it out there on LinkedIn, you know, again, I would keep it brief, but saying something if you feel like the gap might be something that would come up as a question. So now we're down to experience. And with experience, this is the section that most people usually end up focusing on a lot because it mimics their resume. And I will just say that the experience section on your LinkedIn is not your resume. Because your resume is usually at least a solid page, sometimes longer, depending on how long you've been out of school. And so you want to make sure that you list your 3 most recent jobs in the experience, but you're not going to be as descriptive with those jobs as you would be on a resume. So if it's not clear what the employer does, you do want to give a quick one-liner of what's the main thing that the employer does, or what's the job, you know, sort of just so that people know what it is that they do. But aside from that, you want to make sure that you list your key skills in that job and your key accomplishments. So, and then if you're switching careers, I would say that you want to show how your skills are transferable. So if you have experience in, and you're going to a different industry or a different job, you want to just try to highlight how transferable these skills are. Also, stay away from any acronyms and jargon that might be relevant in the industry. You want to spell that out as much as possible, because again, if you're switching industries or you have a recruiter who's not as familiar with that particular, jargon, they might miss what you have to offer. So you want to make it easy for them. So that's the experience section. And then skills, endorsements, and recommendations, which tend to get ignored because people don't really know what to do with them. So what I recommend is it's a good idea to have a mix of endorsements, skills, and recommendations. I would say 5 skills, no more than that, because you want to, again, the more skills you put out there, the more you kind of dilute what skills you have. If you list like a laundry list of skills, there may be some exceptions to this, but the general rule, I would say 5 skills is kind of like a happy medium. And then with recommendations, 1 for each listed job that you have out there, at least 1. You can have more than 1. Again, you want to be thoughtful about who you ask for the recommendations and what it tells people. So the most impactful recommendations tend to be the ones from your manager and the person who you reported to directly. You can have some other ones, the ones from your peers or people who are your direct reports are also helpful. They're helpful in different ways, right? So if you're interviewing for a job where you'll have direct reports, if those people have, any sort of decision-making power, they're going to be looking to see how other direct reports talked about you. And so that is relevant for that. And peers who might be in the decision-making authority, sort of, they might be looking to see how you would be as a colleague, that kind of thing. But again, the most impactful ones are going to be your manager ones. So if you can only pick one, I would say pick the manager one. If you have a couple, I think that's okay too. And be mindful of when you ask people for recommendations, because if you ask everyone for a recommendation at the same time, it tends to kind of water down the importance or relevance of the recommendations. Of course, there are situations where maybe you weren't looking for a job and now all of a sudden you're looking for a job and you're asking everyone for a recommendation. But as a general rule, and if you're in a situation where you leave a job, it might be a good idea to ask your manager, if you had a good relationship, to give you a recommendation so that you can use it in the future, because those can stay on as long as you want them on there. So just something to think about. And then education. The only thing I'm really going to say about that is that depending on how long you've been out of school, once you've graduated, education kind of comes to the bottom, because what's more important is your current experience. But that's not to say it's not important. And I often see clients leave their undergraduate experience off if they have a graduate degree, because they're like, well, they assume that if I have a graduate degree, I obviously earned an undergraduate degree. But a couple of things it does is, first, sometimes it might put into question for people, well, did they finish that degree? Where was it? All that. The other thing that it does is it kind of cuts out some potential connections you might have, because what if the recruiter that is looking at your LinkedIn is an alumni or an alumna of the same school you went to? And that might be an immediate connection, and they might be more willing to offer you an opportunity for an interview, and you just missed out on that because you didn't list your undergrad experience. So I would say list all of your educational experiences, and that will sort of maximize the network piece. Other tips, LinkedIn is really informal, so first person is fine. And if you are changing, especially if you're changing jobs or industries, make sure you tailor it. So with resumes, what I tell clients is you have to have a resume for pretty much each job that tailored for each job that you're applying for. With LinkedIn, obviously you can't do that every time because it's static, it's going to stay there. So, but make sure you're at least tailored to the industry that you're targeting, and make sure that, you know, the keywords are there, because again, a lot of times recruiters are going to look for keywords and then move on. So, so make sure that's there. And then lastly, and this may seem silly, but spelling and grammatical mistakes are a really big turnoff. And so take the time to make sure that you've reviewed it. LinkedIn is not as text heavy as a resume is, so it's easier to do that, but just read through it, have someone else read through it to make sure that you're not making any simple sort of grammatical mistakes and errors. So that's that. And then informational interviewing. So you're going to use LinkedIn to create some informational interviewing opportunities for yourself. And before I share my informational interviewing tips with you guys, if we could just do a quick poll on how many people have done an informational interview in the past. Great. So about 2/3 have done an informational interview, and about a third have not. So, all right. So let me share with you. So first of all, an informational interview is just a conversation you're setting up with someone for the purpose of learning more about that person, their job, their industry, their company. It is not an opportunity to ask for a job. So the unwritten rule is never, ever ask for a job in an informational interview. It's okay to say you're looking for a job. It's okay to say you're looking to pivot, change industries, etc. But it's not okay to ask directly for a job, because that person will never do an informational interview again with you if you do that. But basically, you want to, so let's say you decided to change industries and you want to find out more about another industry. So you want to reach out to some people who either you know or your network knows, who might be able to offer you some information on, you know, next steps, what you need to get to where you want to go, to share their path, their career path, and how they've gotten to where they are. Those are all things that you would accomplish in an informational interview. So to secure an informational interview, you want to be specific and concise in your ask. Tell the person who you are, why you're contacting them, and what they can help you with. So, you know, my name is Marta McManus. I'm looking to talk to a few people who work in the hospitality industry. And I was hoping that, you know, a friend, whoever the referral was, you know, my friend Joe, thought that you might be a good contact for me to talk to. I was wondering if I could have 20 minutes of your time to ask you some questions. And then that's it. And then just be flexible in scheduling, give them some time to respond. You know, people don't always respond right away to these kinds of requests. So I would say give them 2 weeks. If they don't respond after 2 weeks, it's okay to follow up. But, and again, never ask for a job. Then during the interview, you want to come prepared as you would for a regular interview, but this time you're doing the interviewing. So you want to come prepared with some questions, 10 to 15 questions about that person, their path, the field, the company. Again, never asking for a job. Take notes, and, you know, feel free to, it's a conversation, so feel free to share what you've learned so far about what you're trying to do. Stick to the time you asked for, and ask for one referral in addition to that person that they think might be helpful for you to talk to, because that again expands your network. So you might say, this was so helpful, you know, do you think, is there anyone else you think I should talk to that might be helpful in my research on this, you know, and then they might say yes or no. If they say yes, you know, follow up with who and how, and that way when you reach out to that person, you can say, you know, Joe Smith recommended that I reach out to you. And then thank them for their time and promise to stay in touch, and actually do stay in touch. And this is again where LinkedIn comes in. So you, after the interview, you want to send a thank you note, but you also want to connect with them on LinkedIn. You might even ask them that at the end of your interview to say, I'd love to stay in touch. Is it okay if I connect with you on LinkedIn? And then connect with them and stay in touch that way. And it's a two-way street because it's a relationship, right? It's a relationship building opportunity, and it's a relationship. So if you see, if there were, this is why I said take notes, because if you along the way in your research find something that might be helpful, maybe a challenge or something that they talked about, you can send them a note, even if it's just an article or something that you find like, oh, I came across this in Harvard Business Review, thought might be relevant to what we talked about. And this does a couple of things. It brings you to the forefront of their mind if they might have an opportunity or know someone who does. So the reason informational interviewing is so great is because it's a no pressure situation for you to sell yourself to someone and potentially other people in their network, right? Because now what happens is that person might not have a job for you right now, but they might have an opening in 3 months, and they'll be like, oh, I talked to so-and-so, I should reach out. Or maybe they're, at an event talking to a friend who is in the industry, and that person says, we have an opening, do you know anyone? And now your connection says, oh yeah, I just met with someone the other week, let me put you in touch. So what you've done is, by meeting with this one person, you've again expanded your network, and now they're doing the work for you by saying, I have someone, we hit it off, they were great, let me put you in touch. And so this is, in a nutshell, why informational interviewing is such a useful tool for you to have in your toolbox as you're doing this work. So I think that about wraps it up. Just to summarize, sort of how to network successfully is just to have, use the tools that I shared, but also to keep in mind that networking is not something that happens overnight. And it's a relationship building exercise, and you will need to have patience and resilience to use it. Because again, oftentimes it's not going to be an overnight thing. It's not like you apply for a job and tomorrow you get a call. So it's an investment in your professional future. So I think that's all for me. I think we're at the questions stage.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, I've been taking down lots of good notes. One question for you that had come in from registration, and for all of you who are here with us, go to the Q&A tab on the webinar control panel if you have questions that you'd like to ask. But one question that came in from registration was from someone who said, how do you take a step back in responsibility and then take a step forward again?
So that's a great question. So it depends on, as many of these things do, on a lot of factors. But if you like where you are currently and you like the company and your job, the first thing would be to talk to your supervisor and see if there are opportunities for maybe a job share. Maybe there are 2 people who can do the job, and that allows you to take the part-time approach, right? Or maybe there's an option to, like, you can come up with a proposal of how to still accomplish what they need you to do, but in a less time, and maybe reducing compensation and those kinds of things. If that's not an option at your current job and you're looking for other opportunities to step back and then step back up again later, and I'll talk about the later part in a minute, but if you're looking to step back first, there are lots of organizations, and more since the pandemic has started and has highlighted this issue out there. There's some great resources through the Mom Project is one organization, Elasta Jobs is another one, and lots of other Flex Professionals, I think, is another one, where there are opportunities for you to look for sort of the gig economy type situations where it's either part-time, contract, flexible, freelance, and all of those options. And so that's another sort of option. And then the step back up, I think if you remain in the workforce in any capacity, on your resume, no one's going to see whether your job was part-time, right? So as long as you're working in the field that you're trying to step back up later, you're going to keep your network, you're going to keep your relevant skill set, you're going to keep all those things. So it's not going to be that difficult. When you're ready, you simply open up that network again and say, okay, I'm looking at going back to a higher level position now because my life circumstances have changed. And I think, again, thankfully, this was many years coming, but the pandemic has made, and I've seen this happen a lot with clients, has sort of highlighted this issue, and to the point where LinkedIn now offers, stay-at-home mom as a job title that you can list on your LinkedIn, which I think is phenomenal, and it was never an option. And I think the conversations happening about, I'm not going to say there's no stigma about this, but there's much, much less stigma about taking a break or stepping back and then stepping back up after a break. So.
And I think that's such a great point, because I know I've heard from a lot of people just over the years who have said, oh, how do I explain this gap on my resume? And I look and I say, there's no gap on your resume, because they've had part-time work and it may have not been the exact perfect part-time work, or not in the industry they want, but they've been working, doing something, or they've had significant volunteer roles. So I look, this isn't a gap, it's just not what you want to do now. And I think realizing that there's value in that experience.
It's just a mindset. I mean, it's a gap in their mind because they've taken, a role that was less responsibility than they thought they could do or should do. But again, it's, to an employer, what they care about is, can you do the job I need you to do now? And if you can show through your relevant education, experience, et cetera, skills that you can, they're not going to question whether you did that job 30 hours a week or 50 hours a week,
Right. Yes. And that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. Oh, and the other question was about how to pivot from full-time to part-time work. So that covers that too.
Yeah.
There was one comment in the chat, and I kind of responded a little bit, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about, and it had to do with networking. And we were talking about, okay, networking being the best way to land jobs. And the reality is that in some industries, like I thought of the government in particular, you can't network your way to a job. You have to go through USA Jobs, or you have to go through these very formal portals. But there's still value in networking. Even if you have to apply, you have to go through those channels. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think you hit the nail on the head. Yes, you can't maybe network for that specific job, but you can still network with people. I mean, it's not like people who work in government don't go out and don't network, right? Like they still go to events and things, and they're still on LinkedIn. They still can talk to people, and they have connections, and so you can meet them through their connections. So I would say it might not be for that specific job that you're trying to target, but you can still network to find out, okay, well, if I'm looking to apply to a government job, what are some of the things that might be important to the employer, right? And what are some things that that person that can actually provide really valuable insight. What's the interview process like, and what should I focus on, right? So I'll give an example of a client. It's not government as in like the US government, but it's a public school job, and so someone who was trying to be a school counselor and had a degree to be a school counselor, but has not worked as a school counselor, had worked in education before. And so one of the things that I recommended for them was to join the Massachusetts School Counselor Association. And they started going to the meetings and also the more regional and local meetings, and they met people, and then they got involved in some of the professional conferences and things like that, and they met more people, and then they started to hear, and this is what the hidden jobs piece, right? You might not know, like the jobs might not be posted yet, but you find out about them through your connections and your network of people. So that might be similar in sort of the government space is that I know there's a very specific process you have to apply, and you have to, I mean, most places still have the process. You still have to fill out an application online, even if you heard about it through a connection and the job was never posted. When you get to HR, you still have to fill out the application because they have to have a file that you did it. But I think, so I think to your point, that can happen as well.
Yes, and it is a great point, kind of the hidden job market. It is still formal. It's not all under the table, kind of surreptitious work.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Well,
So
this is great.
I see one more question in Q&A, and I just put my next screen up because yes, absolutely. If you want to stay in touch with me, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I have a website as well, and my email is there too. I also, I do, talk to clients on in career coaching and things like that. And so I do offer a 20-minute free consultation. If you're someone who thinks that they might want to explore working with a career coach, there's no commitment. It's free. We can just talk if it's something that you think that might be helpful. And I'm happy to have that conversation. And basically it's to see whether I can help you with what you're looking for and if we would be a good fit. If not, no hard feelings. I love this work and I love what I do. So it's kind of in my blood. I can't get it out. I just like career coach all the time. And so I'm happy to help if I can. And, I wish you all the best of luck in your transitions and pivots. And if I can be helpful, let me know. And thank you, Maura, for this opportunity. It's been great to.
My pleasure. Well, I should say, thank you for sharing all of your great advice with us, because this has been really jam-packed. And thank you for being willing to follow up and answer questions. And I encourage you to connect with Marta, because she does. We're connected, and you also offer good posts and good tips through LinkedIn. So I appreciate that too.
I try to keep them to like a minimum, so it's not too many, because people don't want to see that all the time. But there's so much good advice out there, and I think I try to highlight the things that are maybe helpful to people. So yes, no, it's very appreciated, and thank you thank you to all of you for being here today. It's great to have you. Thank you for your participation and your great questions. If you have any questions, you can contact me here in the alumni office. And otherwise, I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. And if I don't talk to you, have a very happy Thanksgiving. Take care, everyone.